This moment of tragedy, I want to say to them and to the world and to terrorists everywhere that the United States stands with Israel. We will not ever fail to have their back. We'll make sure that they have the help their citizens need and they can continue to defend themselves. You know, the world's seen appalling images. Thousands of rockets in a space of hours raining down on Israeli cities. I got up this morning and started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians. In the street, in their homes, innocent people murdered, wounded, entire families taken hostage by Hamas. Just days after Israel marked the holiest of days in the Jewish calendar. It's unconscionable.
The Bible says, blessed are the peacemakers. You know that, right? Blessed are the peacemakers. I made peace. Remember, Hillary said, he will take us into war. No, I took us out of all these wars. I got us out of Syria, got us out of Iraq. I protected Israel. They would have been in a big problem. But I'll be your peacemaker, and I am the only candidate who can make this promise to you. I will prevent World War III. We are very close to World.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. So, unfortunately, we got to talk about something super serious, super sad, super disturbing that is happening in Israel. You guys will probably all know already, but, you know, I wish that every day we could just be about making fun of Joe and trolling brain-dead leftists, but really, because of people like Joe and the mushy-brain folks that we talk about on here that have supported him, well, this is why things like these happen in the first place. You know, this is what emboldens our enemies. And unfortunately, in a lot of situations, strengthens them, like we just saw. So, I mean, if you guys aren't keeping up, yesterday morning, in the most surprising possible way, Israel declared war on Hamas. The same Hamas, I'll remind you, that is supported by some of our own United States government officials, Congress people. But anyway, that's for another video. You know, we've never seen an act like this from Hamas, one so coordinated, so large, so complex. You know, they fired thousands and thousands of rockets, so many that the Iron Dome was actually overwhelmed. They attacked on the ground into Israeli cities and have literally taken entire families hostage and killed many others. They also attack from the sea, which is something they don't usually do. You know, these are the people that, you know, like I said, some in our government would have you believe are the ones open to peace and needing of peace, you know. And it's just a reminder of what the real world is really like. You know, this used to happen all the time to some level or another, you know, all the way, my whole life, all the way through the Obama administration. And guys, I'm not saying that Donald Trump did anything special in the Middle East, although, you know, icing General Soleimani and negotiating the Abraham Accords were pretty absolutely monumental. So I'm not saying he did anything special, but I am saying that this stuff just did not happen under Donald Trump. Read that however you're going to read it. But it's true. It just didn't happen. And now it seems, you know, especially since our Afghanistan disaster, that the enemies of the West, they just want to try us on, basically. You know, they look like they feel that now may be the time. You know, and honestly, they're probably right. Our leadership and resolve has probably never been weaker in our history. So I guess, honestly, they'd be crazy not to try and capitalize. And not to mention Hamas, I'm sure you'll all remember, guys, is financially backed by Iran, the country that Joe Biden just unfroze $6 billion of blood money for. And I'm not saying that's directly related to this attack. You know, an attack this complex has been in the works for a while, I'm sure. But it doesn't paint a very good picture, does it? You know, anyway, you know, I probably can't do a better job of explaining this. So I want to show you Pete Hegseth on Fox, you know, one of the last, honestly, great talents on Fox, explaining how complicated and how dynamic this attack really was. Take a look at this. But before we do, guys, thanks to everyone that's been subscribing and leaving great comments. Really appreciate you guys being a part of this. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. Check this out.
The maps of the region. Trey mentioned a lot of the dynamics around the state of Israel. So just to orient into the map, this is the state of Israel right here. And they're surrounded effectively by enemies of their state. You mentioned the Gaza Strip controlled by Hamas. That's in the southern part of the country. Up north, you have Hezbollah, which is strongly supported by Syria and Iran over here. And then you have the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, which has Islamic Jihad and Hamas fighters there as well. So with this attack in the south out of the Gaza Strip, Hamas is hoping that fighters in Hezbollah in the north in Lebanon and in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem might join in that fight. But let's zoom in just a little bit to the southern part of the country, which is where Trey is this morning. So as I mentioned, this is the Gaza Strip. It was controlled by Israel for decades. In 2005, it was given over to the Palestinian Authority as part of a peace deal. Well, within 2 years, Hamas, a terrorist organization, took over the Gaza Strip. And they have for years been collecting rockets, building tunnels, attempting to infiltrate the south of Israel and commit terrorist attacks against the population there. I've spent a lot of time in the south of Israel, in those communities like Sderot, right here, right on the edge where you can see that border fence and where there are reports of casualties of Israeli civilians. Now, a lot of military defense facilities for the IDF here, too. But one of the things to note is that as Hamas has gained power, they've gained sophistication with their rockets and ability to hit. So these red spots are spots where, on the map, according to the IDF, Israeli rockets have hit. This is Jerusalem right here. There are reports that there have been strikes inside Jerusalem as well. Tel Aviv is up here. Rockets used to only be able to hit adjacent communities. Now they're able to reach further into the state of Israel, into civilian populations. And because it was 2,000 to 3,000 rockets, guys, is what we're hearing this morning, the IDF famously has the Iron Dome batteries that are there to shoot them down. They couldn't shoot them all down. And so the IDF is responding from places like Jerusalem to the south to try to take back territory that a terrorist organization stated by our country and others in Hamas is holding Israelis hostages and pulled many of them back into the Gaza Strip, which is completely controlled by a terrorist organization. So, guys, the lesson has been throughout time, if you give land over to radical Islamists, they're going to do what radical Islamists do, which is to seek Israel's destruction and wipe them off the map. And so they use what little international aid they get. They channel it not toward their people and building schools and building hospitals, but into building tunnels and supplying weapons to their terrorist fighters, all of which somehow was kept mostly under wraps. It sounds like Israel is mostly surprised by this. This is a sophisticated attack. I mean, as someone who's been involved in ground infantry operations, to coordinate air and land, and it sounds like maybe even sea with paragliders and motorcycles and bulldozers, this was something somehow they kept out of the...
So, yeah, this is what's going on. The terrorist organizations that are financially backed by the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism, who our government, led by President Joe Biden, just gave $6 billion back to, has launched a very sophisticated military attack on an American ally. And if you're keeping track, we're basically 0-2 on successful prisoner swaps. But, of course, the Biden administration, they're already trying to spin this. They were out when it happened, and immediately out with it, this narrative that Iran can't just use the cash for whatever they want. They can only use it for whatever the U.S. says they can, humanitarian relief and feeding people and that kind of stuff. But let me tell you how I see this. Say a country only had $6 billion and it needed every bit of that to keep its citizens just barely alive, which is essentially what's going on over there. And here comes the all-powerful Biden administration to give them another $6 billion. But they can only use that $6 billion to keep their citizens alive. So what do you think a country like that might do with its now undirected original $6 billion? I mean, come on, guys. Anyone who falls for that narrative, or even worse, any mind-numb lefty troll that propagates that ridiculously lazy accounting lie truly doesn't have a clue. And all that said, guys, Iran basically told Joe they're going to use that money basically for whatever they want.
What is your expectation of its use? We're told that it's for humanitarian purposes, food and medicine. Do you believe you have the right to use that money in any way that you see fit?
This money belongs to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and naturally, we will decide, the Islamic Republic of Iran will decide to spend it wherever we need it.
So if I hear you clearly, that it will be used for more than humanitarian purposes in your view?
Humanitarian means whatever the Iranian people needs. So this money will be budgeted for those needs. And the needs of the Iranian people will be decided and determined by the Iranian government.
So let me ask you guys who you believe. Let me know in the comments. Do you believe the Biden administration can direct or track even $1 of Iranian money? Or do you believe the Iranian president, who basically says, zip it, Joe? And come on, these guys can't even track the money that they spend themselves here at home. So anyone who believes they can keep Iran from building bombs with Biden's gifts is just naive, But of course, Joe says there's no evidence, no proof that the billions he gave led to the attack. Take a look.
The White House has pushed back, as we've reported, on suggestions by Republican presidential candidates that the recent hostage deal that involved the release of $6 billion contributed to the Hamas attack. The $6 billion is still currently held in a Qatari bank account with U.S. Treasury oversight. The money came from Iranian oil sales to South Korea and did not include U.S. taxpayer dollars. NSC spokesperson Adrian Watson said in a statement, quote, "Not a single cent from these funds has been spent yet, and when it is spent, it can only be spent on things like food and medicine for the Iranian people. These funds have absolutely nothing to do with the horrific attacks today, and this is not the time to spread disinformation."
So they're right. I imagine that we would never prove it one way or the other. And to quote Hillary, what difference does it make now anyway? What's done is done. But I think we can all agree, no matter how intellectually corrupt our thought process may be, we can all agree that giving billions of dollars to a country like Iran is probably just not a good idea. All we've done through our actions and our policies is embolden bad actors all over the world. It's heartbreaking when you think about it, man. All of this, a broken border that's killing people, a disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that cost lives there, which literally led to the destruction of Eastern Europe, is now leading to mass casualties to come in the Middle East. All because people were manipulated by the daily drip of propaganda by our liberal mainstream media. This is what it costs, guys. The things we do here are affecting the entire world, and not in a good way. I firmly believe, let me know in the comments if you agree, this would never have happened under a President Donald Trump. Let's have a look at what he has to say.
And we're going to talk about that in a second. But this country is just headed so badly. The Israeli attack was made because we are perceived as being weak and ineffective and with a really weak leader. And we will discuss it in a few minutes. But isn't that a shame what's happening all over the world? Things are not what they were just 3 years ago. You take a look. They weren't ever as good, and now they are really probably maybe the worst we've ever seen in terms of our country. When you look at the Afghanistan pullout, you ever see anything like that? The most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. The Hamas terrorist invasion of Israeli territory, and the murder of Israeli soldiers today, and the brutal murder of citizens is an act of savagery that must and will be crushed. It has to be dealt with very powerfully. This is a time where the United States needs leadership. We don't have leadership. But Israel is at war, and the United States obviously is going to stick with Israel, and strongly. The war happened for two reasons. The United States is giving and gave to Iran $6 billion, $6 billion, over hostages. And, there was a very good trade. They got 5 hostages. We got 5 hostages. Okay, that's the good news. The bad news is, and their hostages were tough, by the way, I have to tell you. That was, okay, let's assume they're doing just fine. But it was 5 for 5. But in addition to that, we agreed to free up $6 billion. And that is an absolute disaster. And I would not be at all surprised if part of that tremendous wealth that they just accumulated went into all of a sudden watching this level of aggression. They didn't have that level of aggression with me. They didn't have it. This would have never happened with me either. You know what wouldn't have happened? Ukraine wouldn't have happened. Taiwan and all this tough talk with Taiwan wouldn't have happened. And what's going on with Israel right now? People were shocked. I wasn't shocked because 2 weeks ago we gave them $6 billion. Think of it. So we get 5, they get 5, but the difference is we have to give $6 billion. $6 billion! Does anyone know what a billion is? $6 billion. It's like it's water. And we have now, our country is a perceived, we're really a country that's looked at with this tremendous perceived weakness with a grossly incompetent and corrupt president. He's an incompetent man. He's corrupt. I don't know if he makes it to the starting gate. I guess in a way he does. We want to.
So yeah, I challenge any one of you guys that likes to watch the channel and disagree, because I appreciate you guys being here, which I really do appreciate. But if you can't, help me understand anything wrong with what he just said there, because I completely agree with him. Our enemies have come to the realization that we are weak. We trade basketball playing drug smugglers for international arms dealers. We trade billions for hostages held by the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. And we're willing to leave an entire military's worth of arms behind in our surrenders. No matter what they tell you, no matter how they spin it, we caused this. We are completely responsible. And by we, I mean every single virtue signaling Biden voter that just did it because he wasn't Trump. Obama was absolutely right when he warned us. It was a warning. He wasn't being snarky. He was warning us. Elections have consequences. And unfortunately, they don't end at our borders anymore. Anyway, guys, that's just my take. Let me know yours in the comments. If you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. We'll see you in the next one. And prayers for Israel, guys.